My ongoing postdoc research basically focuses on various aspects of ethnopolitical mobilization within the elected non-territorial autonomies of this region of Central and South Eastern Europe. So especially our focus on those cases marked with the green color, in which registered minority members, minority voters have the right to to register on one hand, and also to create their own their own minority self-governments or minority councils through direct or indirect elections at various levels. So as you can see, Estonia, Hungary, and 3 of the former Yugoslav republics can be classified into this category: Slovenia, Croatia, and Serbia. These examples are officially labeled as autonomies, but of course we know quite well when it comes to their rights, competencies. So in many cases, especially in Estonia and Croatia, they are, well, not more than just some kind of an advisory or consultative bodies. So for instance, in Croatia, these bodies have no power to decide on anything, and in Estonia these bodies have no legal entities at all. But I find it quite important and often neglected in the relevant literature to focus on these specific minority elections and ethnopolitical mobilization within these MTA regimes. I think there's no need to go into the theoretical background and the conceptual challenges of MTA. I think, well, Francesco and Tove addressed these issues, as well as the Tkachik typology yesterday. So first, as to the theoretical challenges, what I would like to highlight is basically that many point out the relationship between NTA regimes and the respective territories. So, I mean, the question whether and to what extent these non-territorial regimes are territorial, or is there some kind of, or should there be some kind of a demarcating line between territorial and non-territorial autonomies, as we will see a bit later. Many of these regimes have crucial territorial elements, numerical or various other kinds of electoral thresholds, which result in a situation that significant parts of the respective communities basically have no access to these autonomous institutions, although they are declared to be non-territorial based on the personal principle, but as a result of the territorial dimension. So very briefly, I would just highlight some of the main findings of the relevant literature. So the relevant authors basically point out this contradiction between the communist legacy, that how the positions of the titular nations were institutionally entrenched in the legal system and the constitutions at the expense of the minorities. So we can just witness the continued dominance of the nation state model, while on the other hand we could also witness the rise and or the boom of the various NTA arrangements, or those arrangements that are labeled as non-territorial cultural autonomies, and as a consequence, they argue that these regimes were created rather in a top-down manner, or they were often motivated by instrumentalist considerations such as external pressures or desire for some kind of reciprocity. For instance, the Hungarian. As to the Hungarian model, it's often argued that it was created with an eye on the numerous ethnic Hungarian communities living in the neighboring countries. So given these findings and these potential main features, so that is why I find it extremely important to take a look at how minority communities themselves will take a look at or approach these arrangements, and that is why I think the minority elections will prove to be or serve as a potential tool, as a potential analytical tool to investigate minorities' basic behavior and perception towards these regimes. I've just mentioned in my introductory note that although they are labeled as autonomies, in many cases they've got quite, generally speaking, they've got quite limited power. Some argue that they can be considered as some specific form of even outsourcing, that certain minority issues are basically transferred to these bodies, but these arrangements are still controlled by the state authorities as well. And what we can also witness that, for instance, in Hungary or in Serbia, in certain cases, that these bodies, minority self-governments and councils, are hijacked by the external and governmental actors and policies, so they're dominated by external considerations as well. I've just realized that in my abstract, basically, I've just promised the moon to you. So there's just, I think I've got time to highlight some of the main questions I'm interested in and some result. So basically, I'm pretty much interested that if we are just talking about non-territorial autonomies or non-territorial arrangements in principle, so if we just accept this idea that whether and to what extent they are able to territorially cover the relevant population, which is often territorially dispersed, and when compared with other channels of minority representation, participation, whether and to what extent are they able to mobilize group members as well. Here you can see the relevant communities. So generally speaking, they are quite small. They often live dispersed, and in many cases they are at a quite advanced stage of cultural and linguistic assimilation. But of course there are larger communities like the Roma in Hungary, or the Hungarian community in Serbia. Okay, as to the territorial coverage, at one extreme we can find the Slovenian case, which adopted the personal principle, but it is applied only to the officially defined mixed areas in those areas in which the Italian and the Hungarian minorities live. What is important that the well-defined mixed area is not exactly the same as the boundaries of the relevant municipalities. So we can just in Slovenia we can just witness cases, for instance, in the coastal Slovenia that on one side of the streets everything is bilingual, while on the other side of the streets everything is written in Slovene, which is a quite challenging issue for the minorities themselves. What I would also like to point out that only those who live in these officially and well-defined mixed areas have the right to create their self-governments at local and regional level. So although these two communities live relatively territorially concentrated, those who live outside of these respective territories, approximately 15 or 20% of the community, so basically have no access to these institutions. So they cannot create these their own autonomous bodies. We've got a somewhat similar case in Hungary where minorities can elect their own self-governance even at the local level, but not necessarily in each municipality where they live. So certain numerical and electoral thresholds are adopted, which results in a situation that, as you can see, that those segments of the communities which are marked by the green color. So although they would register, so they register themselves for these minority elections, because of these numerical and territorial thresholds, they cannot create their own bodies at the local level. So I mean, in those municipalities where they live. So for instance, in the case of the Ukrainians, is more than 20% of the community. From another perspective, if we take a closer look at the territorial coverage, it's interesting to see if we compare electoral registration with the latest census data. And well, it shows us that more than 90% of the Roma, for instance, live in those settlements where local minority self-governments were elected. So in this regard, I would say that Roma are quite well covered by this non-territorial system, unlike, again, the Romanians or the Ukrainians. As you can see, only 45% of the Ukrainians live in the settlements. And it's also an interesting research question to address the causal effect. I mean, that is it the case that Roma declare themselves as Roma only in those settlements where minority self-governments are created, or is it the case that the institutions may have a certain incentive to declare identities? So this is an interesting question to address. If we just compare again the registration data with the census data, so we can see again in the Hungarian case the significant part of the communities are probably abstain from the registration process, so they do not register themselves, and so they do not participate at their own elections. Probably we've got better results in Serbia if we just compare the latest census data with the latest electoral registration data. So we've got higher percentages for the minorities, but I think so I need to emphasize that I think we all know quite well that from many perspectives, census data are not, in many cases, are not so reliable sources, but this is what we can rely on. We can, here we can see the data from Croatia, so quite similar to the Serbian case, that a relatively high number of the communities of register themselves for these elections, for these minority elections. Although we can just witness a decline in the numbers in Croatia, where, with the exception of one or two communities. Here you can see the two largest communities, a significant drop in the number of the Serbian voters from the early 2000s. In Serbia, well, generally speaking, we can find the growing number of registered minority voters, but we've got, well, crucial exceptions of certain traditional communities, the Bunyavci, the Hungarians, Ruthenians, Slovaks, in certain communities living especially in Vojvodina have to face a decline in their in the number of the registered voters. As to the voter turnout, probably we can witness the lowest results from Croatia. So as you can see, most of in most of the cases, the percentage is below 30 percent, and we can see well, higher percentage in Serbia, but in certain cases a crucial decline also in voter turnout as well. And last but not least, I would also highlight another factor. So if we just compare the number of registered voters and the votes casted at the minority elections and the parliamentary elections in Hungary. A bit later, well, Agnes will talk about this special system in Hungary, when minorities have the right to elect special spokesperson to the parliament. And I'm interested in the question that is it the case that in those areas, in those municipalities where we have a higher number of voters for the minority election, then accordingly we will have a higher number for the parliamentary elections. And as you can see, well, the correlation shows a rather mixed picture. So in many cases, probably it's not the case, and probably the reason why these spokespersons have limited rights, so do not have voting rights in the parliament. So only just the handful of these minority communities are registered for the parliamentary elections, and this is not the case in Croatia, where minorities have the right to reserved seats in the Croatian Sabbat, in the Croatian parliament. So as you can see, we've got higher correlation results. So with the exception of the German community in Croatia, so something happened in this case. As to my conclusions, it's an important challenge for these regimes how to reach, cover and mobilize potential group members who often live territorially dispersed. And as we could see, they are only partially able to cover group members. At one extreme, we can find the Slovenia with its crucial territorial element, and at the other extreme, we can find probably Serbia, which has adopted the personal principle in its purest form. In many cases, we can see the decreasing number of registered voters and relatively low and declining voter turnout, especially in Croatia. So we can, in my research, I also address other questions of electoral competition, but we can see that these are often highly non-competitive elections. There are no stakes, and of course they are often weakly functioning bodies, and it's also an interesting question if we just having said all these, are these regimes are really able to I mean to fulfill their mission to help these minorities to preserve their identities, or even reverse the ongoing assimilation and outward migration processes. Thank you very much.